from my viewpoint, this is the problem. This is how we hide history. How many children are taught why Pakistan was created? Okay, why was Pakistan created? Pakistan was created merely because a set of Muslims in India said we cannot live with Hindus. Who teaches this? Nobody teaches this. What was the direct action day? Direct action day was 1 year before independence, 1946, when Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, got into a frenzy, got Muslims and started killing Hindus in Bengal. Is this taught? Massacres of partition, India and Pakistan are formed. How many people talk about massacres? Yes, there is some literature about massacres, at least that is available. Then, Bangladesh, 3 million people, okay, it's within my lifetime. Of course, most people are younger than that. Most people may not have been born in 1971. I witnessed the war, at least in the news. 3 million people were killed, 50% of them were Hindus. And Indira Gandhi actually hid the fact that Hindus were being killed because it would cause communal tension. And then Kashmiri Pandits. The problem is, unless we are able to put these things out in public so people know that there is a fear that if we tell the truth, Hindus might rise. This is the sort of government Indian viewpoint. Hindus will rise up and start killing each other. We are not like that. What we need is for the truth to be told, for reconciliation. We are a nation where we debate. We don't kill, we don't become swords and kill. But the truth has to be told. We can't keep on hiding the truth. This is one of the issues that I have. The other thing that mental organization did to us is put very, very low self-esteem. We think we are completely useless. Nothing. We just don't, we don't recognize anything good about India. When we talk about, say for instance, we talk about Venice of the East. What is Venice of the East? Don't we have beauty enough? What is Switzerland of the East? We have to compare with some Western entity to say it's great. We talk about world class. The world, when you say something is good, if you say that the Tejas aircraft made in Bangalore is world class, what you're trying to say is that there is something else in the world that is very good and you're comparing with that. Don't we have any pride in what we do? And the other lie that we tell ourselves that has been, we talk about this again in the context of what is history, what is Satya, what is the truth. Secularism. And secularism is a topic that keeps coming up. What have in the last 1 week, we've had a whole lot of terrorist sympathizers, terrorist thought. There's been 2 bomb blasts at least. And then we hear in the news that there's radicalization. The problem is like this. In secularism, what we have done is, if you go back and read the literature that was written at that time, you had all these people, Muslims, going to Pakistan. Okay, all of them were going to Pakistan. And there was so much concern among the Indian leaders of the day that they wanted to say that Muslims will get even more than what they get in Pakistan. So in India, they said that you can have 4 wives, no problem. It's not allowed in Pakistan. Pakistan does not allow 4 wives. We will give you, to go to Hajj, we give you some money. These are good Muslims. Hindus cannot understand this. But we need to understand. I think we've got enough brains to understand. Okay, and there are millions of Muslims who don't follow all these things. We call them good, but the fact is technically they are not good, and in their societies they will get punished if they start criticizing terrorists. If there is a terrorist act, we ask, why don't Muslims criticize? They can't criticize because they know it is bad, but those people are going as per the book. This is the problem. Those don't understand this. And unless we teach these things, unless we share these things, nothing is going to go forward. I won't go very far after this. We have a lot of good things in India, but we don't talk about them. It's like, the media and we Indians, many people on social media, we use the Sharmaji ka beta meme. You probably know the Sharmaji ka beta meme. That is to say that, you have this boy who's come back from his exam. He's got his exam results and he may have passed or he may have come 10th or 15th. And his father tells him, Sharmaji ka beta dekho, Sharmaji beta has done so well, he's got so many marks, why don't you also do that? we always look at first. You see, India in many ways is in the top 3 or 4 countries in the world. But we are always looking at those fellows, the West particularly. We don't look at the 180, 200 countries below us. We are far, we are a bit like, for younger people, I don't know whether anybody still reads Asterix comics. There's a fellow called Obelix, strong guy. Obelix doesn't know how strong he is. Indians don't know how strong we are. We have a great presence, but we act as though we are Somalia or Congo. Our media act like that. This is what we don't realize how big we are, we're huge. We are the top in so many things. And I won't list out the things. In fact, it would be nice if somebody writes about it, but I'll just mention it. Recently, somebody from Ireland, small country, 1/3 the size of Karnataka, 1/12 of the population, sent me a children's book, picture book on Ireland. Very nice painting, hand paintings, and picture is nothing in it. It's a green country, there are so many people, these are the counties, these are the nice buildings, this is how the government runs. It's a book that anybody can read in about 5 minutes. For that little country, we have written such a lovely, we need books like that. We need books that teach our children, our railways, our industrialization, space program, nuclear submarines, ships, aircraft carriers. There's so many things we've done. The bridges, the roads, the infrastructure. A lot of things have been achieved. We need to put this in a format that children can read and inculcate pride in our children rather than the completely negative outlook, that we have. And I have a very positive outlook about India. Maybe I am like that, but the positivity is not going to come unless all of us work on it. And let's try and do that. Thank you. I hope I've said this.
Alright, unless there is a specific preference, we can just go in this sequence, and that's fine. So next would be Sri Balaji with his presentation. Thank you.
Are you able to hear me well? Yeah. I can't see you well though. So, what's this? It's a great tribute to an Acharya is to have Vidyarthis having a spirit of inquiry. So if we look at Professor KS Narayanacharya's works, the sheer volume, not just the volume, but what all the subjects he has dealt with, and the spirit of inquiry which he has tried to inculcate in all of us. For example, talking about various culture, then suddenly we go into who really killed Bharatiya. Such vast array of topics. He has tried to inculcate a habit of inquiriness. And I think it's a fitting tribute to his memory by our organizers, which is I think Subbu Publications, Udhbhavaha, Param Foundation, and Sahitya Prakashana, to have such events to honor them. So let's all give them a big hand for doing this. And also to all of you over here, because as immediately described, it is not easy to travel in Bengaluru traffic. You all chose to be part of the occasion, so let's all give a hand ourselves. I think we can try a bit harder, right? We have time. So in the morning we had this talk, and the theme was, I think, history, Itihasa, and so how I would connect this tree is to say that there is this phrase called caste system. So how many of you have actually heard this phrase? Caste system? Yes? No? If you can say yes, that would be great. Yes. Almost all. Great. how many of you think that India had some kind of a caste system? Yes? No?
Yes.
So, yes means you agree there was some caste system? Yes. Understood. Great. So, there is a very famous book on caste by Professor Nicholas Wells. And Professor Nicholas opens his book with this statement, which is that when thinking of India, it is hard not to think of caste. In comparative sociology, in common parlance alike, and I am reading it from his exact quote, caste has become a central symbol for India. Indexing it as fundamentally different from other places, as well as expressing its essence. So, there is a lot of English words. So essentially, what it tries to tell is, anybody who is born as a Hindu, like iron gets attracted to a magnet, somehow they are born into this system called caste system. Right? And as a lot of Western literature will tell you, it is not very good and all. So over the period of so many hundreds of years, we are still trying to though we are trying to eradicate it, but we are still getting attracted to it like a magnet. This is the theory. Now, I'm going to tell you this, that caste system is a myth. If I may request all of you, can you please repeat it after me? Caste system is a myth.
Caste system is a myth.
Thank you so much. And the reason I requested you all to repeat it is, if we don't say that clearly, that will become the history, which is they are already trying to make it into, and they will use it as a way to look at our Itihasa. So that's how your history, Itihasa, will be together. They manufacture a myth, put it in your history books, and they give your Itihasa with the lens. So, so you may ask me what is an example. Let's look at our Itihasa, Ramayana. Now what they are saying is, Ramayana is a story of Aryan invaders who came into India, who had a battle with the natives over here. So on that battle is Ramayana. So that is how the myth became a history, it became now a way to view Itihasa. Okay. Now, if you have played any sports, I think all of you might have played, I'm sure, at least cricket, right? So they will tell us that no team wins by just playing defense. So we have to play an offense as well. So when the moment the word caste system comes up, I have seen many discussions where people will say there is no such thing like caste, it is Varna system, then there is no Varna by birth, then there is Varna by occupation, then there is a Jati system, Jati will evolving. So all that they will try to explain, that's all under the assumption that the other person who is bringing up the myth is saying it genuinely. It may be so, or it may not be so. So, how do we play offense? So, first of all, let's go back to the defense. If you are inclined, maybe from a scholarly perspective, from an academic perspective, or just for a knowledge perspective, if you want to know about how the Shastras are dealing with Varna system, what are the myths about the caste system, how they are all to be refuted. So there is almost a 300-page plus book which I have and Subbu Publications have kindly published it. So that book, you can use it as a reference, and book was specifically made with a lot of notes. Because when we interacted with a lot of parents and also with what they call now Gen Z, right? Gen Z, when they were talking to me, they always wanted to know what is the source. Right? They had a lot of doubts about caste. They in fact, a lot of what I would say is some kind of a self-hate about our own civilization. So that's when they come and speak with me. And when I give them a particular refutation, then they say, oh, can you give me the source? And not only that, they immediately will kind of use their phone to check whether we have said is accurate or not. Right? That's your next generation for you. Right? See, in my times, when my father says something, that's the end of the story. Right? I have only one choice, to agree. Right? There is no other choice. So now generations have changed. So So the book Caste Design is available. So if you are interested in all those refutations and all what the Shastras are saying, what are the acquisitions, that is one way to look at it. Now, how do you want to play offense if you are not kind of wanting to be on the defensive? You can ask with some simple questions. What is the definition of this caste system? Is there a sociologically, legally accepted definition of caste system? You could start with that. The next question you can ask is, okay, you talk about this caste system. When and where did this exactly start? Now, then the next question. Did it start in one particular place in Bharat? Or was it like what happened during the Corona period? Right? Suddenly the government announced lockdown, right? So everybody has to stay 40 days, and then like that, all the kingdoms come together and then say, we now invented a new system called caste system, right? Let's all from tomorrow change into this system. Did it happen like that? Now the next question you could then ask is, okay, did it start in one particular place? If it started as per their own theory of caste system, the majority of the population was subjugated. Right? They were oppressed. So if it started in one particular kingdom, why would people in another kingdom say, yes, I like this idea, I would like to be oppressed, right? Can we just build this system into us? Am I saying something wrong? Now, even today, when we see the central government come up with some policies, every state government will kind of look at it, right? And then they will say, hey, I think this may not suit my state. Or they may say, I will have to do some modifications and implement that policy. Right? There are not many subjects which the state government says, I think I am just going to follow all the central government policies. And we are in the same country, right? So that flexibility is even allowed in our current constitution, right? It respects that each state will have its own different needs. So, as per our own historians, they say that all our kingdoms were very busy quarreling among themselves. There never was a period where we had a great empire which was supposed to have taken all India across. So, kings were quarreling. But then every king said, I think this is a great system, I would like to get it implemented in this country. How logical is this? Now the next question which will come is, did it start in one place and if it spread to all the other places, what was the mechanism or institution which was there to reinforce it? In the period of lockdown also, so much of enforcement was required. The civilians, public were made to stay in, but so many government agencies, so many frontline workers took a lot of risk and they were out on the road, right, protecting us, so-called, right? So when government has to have so much of machinery to enforce something like this, how did the caste system magically get enforced? And there was no trace of it, there was no historical evidence of all this happening. So these are the questions we must start asking. And will we get answers? That is, right? But let's start asking these questions at least. Right? Now, the second way to play offense is, let's assume that there is a child born in this area, right, in a maternity hospital, like Janana has happened. And this child will have parents, which is the first previous generation. Is father, mother. Now, the previous generation to that, they will have, the mother will have two parents, father will have two parents. Now, if it is in America, I will have a lot of questions on this. Right? So, in India is fine. Right? So, at least you are not debating this. So, I'll say I have to be very general neutral sometimes. Right? So, two parents, we'll go with that. Right? So that I remain politically correct. Right? So, now, what will be the third generation? The third generation will be that those four grandparents will have two parents each who will be So in mathematical terms, we call this as the 2 power n series. 2 to power 2, 2 power 3 is 8, 2 power 4 is 16. So when we go to 2 power 10, it will be 1024. Right? So 10 generations before, this child which is born today has got 1000 ancestors. So, sorry, lunch and mathematics don't go together well, I know, right? So, is everybody with me so far? Thank you. So, now this 2 power n series has got a unique phenomena. 2 power 10 is 1024. If you go to 2 power 20, it will become 10 lakhs. It is 1048576. So, if anybody wants to check, they can check in their calculator. So 20 generations back, this child had 10 lakh. So you can still say, okay, possible enough. 30 generations back, then if you go, 2 power 30 becomes 1 billion. 100 billion. Now let's look at what does 30 generation mean. Let's say in 100 years, 3 generations are there. So, a person is there and then they have, he or she has a child and then they will have a grandchild. Within a period of 100 years, 3 generations they will see. Pattern, it will be okay. Yeah. So 30 generations means, if I do my math, it is 10 centuries before. So 10th century, 11th century, give or take. In 10th century and 11th century, the world population itself was around. Okay. So the world population itself, they estimate between, I think, 275 to 400 million. So how can this child have 1 billion ancestors? So there is some wrong we are doing in the maths, obviously. So the issue here is, we are counting each one of these ancestors as unique individuals, unique persons. But then second cousins marry, distant relatives marry, all this, that. So in multiple places, the same person will be repeating after 3-4 generations. So there is a mathematical model for it. So there are some models, but commonly you take a model which will say that the 1 billion number is not accurate. You should take 0.09 something. It's 97 something. Let's take for simple argument 0.1. So 0.1% of 1 billion will become around 10 lakhs. So now this is a reasonable number. Right? 10 lakhs, 30 generations back, they would have had. Now here comes the caste system. If you see all the caste system literature they went through, the most common thing they will talk about a word called, what is the characteristic of caste system? If you ask, they will say endogamy. The word they will call it endogamy. Endogamy means marrying within the same community or a tribe. So that is not marrying within a particular group. It's called endogamy. So every caste is supposed to be marrying within itself. That is endogamy. As per the British own calculation, in South India at least, they tabulated more less than 370 plus castes. So, if caste system theory says that each of these groups was marrying within themselves, so this 370 will have to be multiplied by 10 lakh ancestors. So, if you multiply, how much do you get? What? 37%. Yeah. So, the world population itself, that time, the whole world population was sitting in South India. That's what the math tells. Now, so this is how you can challenge this. This is called, in the technical parlance, they call it pedigree collapse. Okay. So now, the moment I bring this up, then somebody will say, so Guruji, so you are telling me that there were intercaste marriages during the time. I said, I'm not telling anything. I'm just saying that there was that endogamy is supposed to be the essence of caste system, so-called caste system. People have written thousands of books on it. So you go pick up books on caste system, there are hundreds of this. Now I have written only one book, and now you come and ask me a clarification. Because I just pointed out the logical inconsistency in their argument. That's all. So now it is for them to come and explain to me how it all worked. Agree? In legal terms, we call it onus probandi. Because the person who made the accusation has the responsibility to prove it, not the other way. So this is the second way we can create the offense. Okay. Now, there is an important thing. The caste as a word itself, we should not use it, and I think many of you even pointed out when I started with the word caste, which is like great, right? Because the caste word comes from the casta, which was of Portuguese origin. I think it's Spanish origin, which went into the colonies of Spain, Mexico, and other Latin American countries. And it comes with certain connotation called the limpeza di sangre. So, limpeza di sangre means the purity of blood. It was essentially a racist movement, to which it has come. And I think Dr. Param Foundation, I think in the morning inauguration, he spoke about, right? There are no such thing like phrases and words which are neutral. Right? So these do have a meaning, they do have a perspective. So we must actually start challenging, attaching the word caste with India. Agreement? Disagreement? So and then we must go back and then challenge some of these narratives. So what are the steps now? I will, in respect of time, I will say a few things. The first step we are trying to dismantle this is by going to the honorable courts and saying that there is no such thing like a Aryan race or Aryan nation. So we have done that. And with Ishwara's blessings, I filed this case myself in the Honorable Chennai Court. And I argued the case myself because there is a provision by which I am allowed to argue my own case in the Honorable Courts. And the courts relied on the evidence, and then they said they gave me a hearing with NCERT and another organization called SCERT. These are textbook companies. The court said, Honorable Court said, you are giving a lot of evidence. Obviously, the textbooks have also been written by experts. How can we be the experts to decide one way or other? But we will give you a personal hearing opportunity. After the hearing, I submitted the evidences to them. So I am happy to report that the NCERT part and the SCERT, they have clearly agreed that there is no such thing like Aryan race. And there is no such thing like Aryan race. And why is it important to us? That is the first step to dismantle this caste system. Because this is a system which has been, a system of myths which has been built brick by brick. So we have to start pulling out each one. Why it is important is if you read all the caste system clearly, what it says is that the first three varnas, so-called varnas, subjugated the fourth varna. They created this oppressor-oppressed model. And why was it so? Because the first three varnas were of Aryan, and these were the native people of the land. That is why they discriminated against them. That is why they oppressed them. That is the logic which is given. Now we have proven that there is no race difference. Now you can start asking questions, why would these first three people get together to suppress the fourth varna? Right? If you look at it, the economical power was the Vaishyas, and the numerical superiority as well as all the skills and the were with the Shudra community, it is more logical that these two would have kind of joined together and oppressed the other two. Okay? In our schools or in our colleges or in our offices, that the majority join together and then the minority is the other way. Yes, no? So now you can start asking these logical questions to dismantle this race divisions. Right? That is why it was important. There is another one which is there, which is called the Purusha Sutta method. Somehow they have taken the Purusha Sutta and then they have created a hierarchical system. I don't know how many of you have heard that. Some of you have heard that Purusha Sutta? Yeah, I see a lot of hands. Right? So that has been also challenged, and I have put out, I think, not less than 1 year back, I have put out a challenge for anybody to disprove that what is our reputation. I have offered even a price of 50,000 rupees. So far no one has come and claimed it. Okay. So the Purusha Sutta hierarchy myth is also shattered. Now what remains is the caste system to be shattered. And together with all of us, we should do it so that our Itihasa and our is not corrupted by the myth and the history making the manufactured histories. Is it good? So the last question before I leave is, there are a lot of legal challenges which are going to come up, which we will do. But at the same time, there are also a lot of things which we are dialoguing with the government, trying to make changes. So we have a website called saptarishi.org. It's saptarishi.org, and we have petitions currently running for protection of Brahmins from hate speech. There is targeted hate speech happening against Brahmins, and that is part of what we call as a civilizational battle, where they want to first destroy one community, then they will use that to go to the next community, they will go to the next community and others. And how do they do? Very simple. They will say, they will look at any person and then say he is being casteist. They will say the person is being Brahminical. Supposing someone comes and says you are being Brahminical, how does a person defend himself? To say, no, he or she say I am not Brahminical, how do you do? You can't, because there is not even a definition of Brahminical. Right? So that is how each one of the communities will be attacked and decimated. That is the way to destroy the civilization. Right? So it is not a protection of a particular caste group or something. It is for a protection of our entire civilization. So I request all of you to go and see, take a minute or two to see this petition. There is no financial requirements to support this petition. There is no membership fees, nothing. So supporting such petitions will also help to bring civilizational issues in front of the government. Okay. Is that okay? Thank you, and each of you can talk about these topics. The last one is the word of mouth, because today most of the media power and the social media power is not with us. So if you can, if you are convinced, you go and talk in your functions or in your relative gatherings or in friend groups to 10%. That is how the word of mouth happens, and that is the most effective way for us to communicate our views. Okay. So I request all of you to take a few minutes to visit that and then see what you can do. Together, let's do this Dharma.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. And now I would like to invite Shri Abbas Maldahia with another exciting subject, a narrative you must know and you must communicate to others. Abbas Maldahia.
Namaskar and Jai Shri Ram to everybody. So, perhaps today is the first time when I am going to use a script to deliver something. It's for multiple reasons. The reason is my father has come to visit me. He's a historian, I am a son of a historian, and when he heard that we had to deliver a lecture on occasion which is a big one, so he said that when this is going to be seen as a transcript, you must try to prepare that and then do it. The first time I'm going to deliver which is not extempore, I'm going to read it out. Apart from that, I will not be speaking anything about what I write so far. I will express my philosophical opinions, views through the process and how I have matured in my writing as of now. And I strongly believe that if we really care about historiography, if we still really care about Itihasa, we have to start writing in the way our ancestors used to write, because with the use of the prose, with the use of metaphor, with the use of allegory, and really get away from the post-colonial way of writing that this doesn't happen. We have to work up, make a shift of it. With this, I will begin talking with one of my poems, which I wrote in my second book in the series of the Mughals, whom I now call Timurids. They were not Mughals, by the way. They were always called Timurids. And that poem appeared in the introduction chapter of it. And I was writing this introduction on the day of Holi. And it just happened that you finish the book and then you write the introduction. So it was the Holi of this year, when I could see in the society people are playing colors and everyone is so jubilant, very happy, cherishing the moments. But then, because I had just finished the book, I had the memories of the Holi of the Chittor. Holi of the Chittor, it's very important to remember, because still people play the Holi with red color only because this is the day when the siege of the Chittor was laid. And a day before it, which was Holika Dahan, the people committed Jawar. So there was a battle which was going within the fort, and there was a battle which was running outside the fort. A battle through the bangles, and a battle through the sword. So this was a poem. It starts this way. Holi is not a dance of hues, not just love in crimson hue. It is the fire where falsehood burns, where tyrants fall and fate then turns. Within us sleeps the child divine, Prahlad's faith unbent by time. Within us waits the lion's might, Narsimha's wrath in golden light. The fire blazed, the witch lives near, yet truth stood firm, untouched by fear. Holika fell, her magic failed. For Dharma's shield has never failed. And then the tyrant rode with hate, blinded by his lofty state. Where is your God? He mocked and jeered. His throne of blood in dark austere. But from a pillar, stone and cold, burst forth the force of the legends old. Neither a man, nor beast, nor sword, nor flame. Narsimha came, none dared his name. No steel he bore, no blade he drew. Yet doom upon the demon flew. With claws divine his wrist were torn, a tyrant slain, a world reborn. And so today, when Holi nears, awaken sons, dissolve your fears. This is not just the day of mirth. It marks the triumph of Dharma's birth. Do you not hear the echoes call? The demons rise, they seek your fall. The ones who hate Aurangzeb's hand still chain our gods, defy our land. The same who burned the Chittor's bright race, who laughed at Rajputi in praise, as saffron warriors fought and bled. And even now, from Bengal shores to temple gates with broken doors, the demons march with blades anew. And still, we ask if love is due. No, holy is the lion's cry. To rise to roar, to never die, to tear apart the chains that bind, and clean the world of darkened mind. So smear the red of Dharma's fight. Let saffron burn in sacred light, for love is not the weakling's throne, but only where its worth is known. So this was a poem which I thought to write in introduction of my book, because I wanted to remind the people that Holi is just not about the joy, but it is to remind you that Narsimha came. He came to vanquish the adharma. We have to see our festivals, our pujas, and every ceremony has something which is a call for the dharma, and we have to rise. So with this, I will jump into what I am going to read out to you, and you can call it out if you feel that it goes a bit long, because I have gone all total to write it through. So, if you stand at the edge of a vast ocean and listen carefully, you will hear web whispering tales of continents long gone, civilization erased, gods forgotten, and languages buried in the dunes of time. Every civilization in history begins like a drop of water falling into a river. It merges, it gets diluted, gets lost, becomes part of someone else's flow, except one, Bharat. Bharat is not a drop in river, Bharat is the river. Every other civilization is a story that ended. Bharat is a story that continues. Every other civilization searches for its origin. Bharat remembers them. Every other civilization left behind dreams. Bharat left behind rituals. Every other civilization tries to reconstruct its past from archaeological fragments. Bharat recites its past every morning in Vedic chant without missing a syllable. Let us begin with the truth that explains all the truths. We still chant the same Vedic mantras today in the same precise meter and pitch as our ancestors did thousands of years ago. This is not mere continuity. This is cosmic stubbornness. Consider what this really means. A man, say thousands of years ago, and a boy in 2025 create the same sound, in the same order, with the same breaths, with the same vibrations, with the same grammatical breath architecture, with the same auditory geometry, as though separated not by millennia, but by moments, no disruptions, no mutations, no linguistic trips, no semantic erosion. This is not merely the heritage which we talk about. This is civilization, defiance of entropy. In physics, entropy is the natural tendency of systems to move toward disorder. But Bharat's oral tradition defies entropy itself. It preserves order across millennia through the discipline of tradition, through the devotion of communities, through the precision of Shastra. But why did the sound matter? Why the sound is such an important thing which I'm talking about? Because it's the real creative force. That's what things begin with. It's a metaphysical resonance which exists everywhere. It can never die. It's ontogenic origin. It's cosmological principle. The vibration which gives birth to everything. Now, it's been around 1300 years of the vanquish which we have faced, though still the history is not lost. When the Islamic expansion began, now, in my own historical understanding, I don't consider that the invasion of Sindh happened as you are taught in Chachnama, because Chachnama is a text written centuries after the event would have happened and would have gone through a lot of corruption. But still, for the sake of what stands as a historical document today, we still see that it happened in 712 CE. So, but back then, the Persia is gone. We saw that Persia is erased, Egypt is erased, Mesopotamia is gone, Byzantium is gone, it's broken entirely. Central Asia completely erased. North Africa completely got transformed. Everything ancient collapsed. Nothing existed. But Bharat did not fall. It continued 20, 200, 500, 700, and we are on and on. And it is exactly resembled because we are still chanting the same Vedic mantras which were chanted millennia ago. It continues the same way. Now, the question is why? Why did it happen? It happened with Persia, it happened with Egypt, it happened with Mesopotamia and other places. Because Bharat did not just murder a political entity. We often see this happening through the TV debates where it is reduced to the political entity, but it is way more than that. Bharat indeed is a civilizational ecosystem, which we all know now. It has become a mainstream narrative. We say that Bharat is a civilizational ecosystem. But where is that Zoroastrian Persian Empire? It's gone. It's a fragment just exists in Bharat through the Parsis as of now. Bharat was millions of autonomous cultural modules which existed, and Egypt got one god. Egypt got one god, so they also had a pantheon of gods. They had multiple gods. Bharat had thousands, and the thousands still live. Many people feel ashamed and they try to fix it that it's not crore and it's just 33 types. Even we are not to be ashamed of, even if we have 33,033 crores of deities, how does it really matter? Because we are existing, stand and tall. Now, Bharat's memories are preserved through our Vedas, through Puranas, etc. That's how we talk about our memories. Now, who were those walls which resisted the thing? Now, it's become a very common social media balance that when you go to the Twitter, you will see a Rajput fighting with a Maratha and vice versa. It is a very common trend. I am very active in Twitter, so I know how it goes again. But the point is that while the Marathas will point out that Rajputs made an alliance with the Mughals, Timurids. They made an alliance with the Timurids, but they were the war for 800 years. It started with Bappa Rawal, it continued. They went into the Jawar, it continued. The Rajputs were our war for almost 800 years, and then finally they got tired. Finally they got tired after the Battle of Chittor, and alliance was made. But till then they had been fighting. Maybe that you wouldn't have heard, but Bappa Rawal used to demolish the mosque. Rangan used to demolish the mosque. Maybe that it would go as a very political statement. But the point was that even when later on Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj killed a pig in the mosque, he meant something. He meant the resistance. It was not that he meant to kill the pig in the mosque, but he wanted to make a statement, and so did Rangan that you do this to us, we are going to pay you back in the same point. And it continues. Maratha's fire continued. After the Rajputs, we saw Rani Tarabai became the vanquisher of Aurangzeb, if I have to say, because it was Rani Tarabai whose attacks, whose acts really made Aurangzeb stick to the Deccan for 27 years. The man died here, the loser man. So everyone on social media will today say, oh, the great Alamgir. But if you really look at his fate, he died trying to conquer the Deccan, but he could never do it, and he got defeated by a female, Rani Tarabai. Now, as we go ahead, it was not just the case. In South also we have seen a lot of resistance. Now Anish has come up with a book about where he's talking about the Cholas, where he's talking about how they had avenged Somnath. Now, we also have the cases of the Pandavas and Cheras giving a great resistance to the Hinduism. It did happen. But again, now in normal panels, we only talk about the Rajputs and Marathas and the forgotten, or perhaps the footnotes of the Ahoms. But they played a very important role. And then, of course, the British invasion did come to us. But still, we tried to figure out some ways or other. Once upon a time, I had a very different opinion for Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Because there were a lot of documents which opened up. But when I spoke to a lot of Bengalis, I figured out that that was a period when everybody was trying to save Hinduism the way they could. We can't really know that what the intent of the people were, because the Hinduism had completely gone away from Bengal. Everyone was trying to find a way somewhere or other, whether it's Brahmo Samaj or any other organization. They were just trying to see that, oh, if we can compete with the monasteristic faith, maybe that this is the way. So everyone was trying their bit. Then came the Swami Vivekananda, we had Maharishi Dayananda Saraswati, and everyone did their part. But in today's social media, you will see that Arya Samaj is fighting with Brahmo Samajis, and Brahmo Samaj is fighting with so-called traditionalists, and it's on there. But the point is that the Bharat stands today as it stands only because all the people from the time to time came together, or even if they did not come together, they were in different regions trying to put what they could at their best in the different ways. And that's how Bharat stands as the way it stands. Now, so I will just dive a bit into my own subject after having spoken a little about the philosophical angle of it. My subject essentially is, I write on antagonists. You name the antagonists and I might be working on them. So, in fact, after doing 2 books on Babar, I spoke to my publisher and I said that I will not be the king, but I want to do a book on this great legendary king. Then my publisher said that you have become a great advocate for the demons, and you are doing it so well. You are trying, because you are doing it so great, because you are trying to show the public what kind of demon they were. Continue doing the work on them. So I have written a book around Hitler. Of course, it's not the biography of Hitler. It's the unholy alliance which happened around Second World War. It's between the Nazis and Arab Muslims. And that alliance was so deep that Hitler once regretted that, oh, I regret that Europe couldn't be conquered by Islam. Maybe that you will be so shocked to hear this. Many think that he was a Christian propagandist. No, he was not actually a Christian propagandist. It just happened that Vatican supported the Nazis. But the truth is that he was trying to form his own Christianity, which was called a positive Christianity. And he saw Jesus Christ as a blonde-haired boy with the blue eyes, the typical Aryan, because the Germans were obsessed with the race, and so it becomes a very important case for them to praise Jesus Christ as a proper Aryan, as they see would look like. Now, in this, coming back to this alliance, Hitler was having a great alliance with the Arabs of the Palestine, and you'll be surprised to know that it was one Arab who incited Hitler to do the Holocaust. And it was such a case that Hitler was seen as the second prophet. It's a kuf, I know. A Muslim will tell you that it's a kuf, but it did happen. He was seen as, he was compared as Allah. Now, why I'm speaking to you about this? I'm speaking to you about this is because a lot of people don't really care about what Shatrubodh means. So, we just attended a Jaipur dialogue where this theme itself was Shatrubodh. But Shatrubodh and Swayambodh is such an essential thing to understand that today you may see the Jews as the Abrahamics. But if the truth be told, the Jews were the people who stood by you, or rather to India, even when we did not stand by them. Case in point is 1971 war. Israel was with us. They stood with us, though America was the ally of Pakistan, and America was also the ally of Israel. But Israel chose to stand by India. In 1999, Kargil war, Israel stood by us, but we were so late to recognize Israel as a state, and there is no country or state right now which stands against the Islamic forces as does the Israel does. So we need to learn a lot from them. We need to see that how they work. We need to know about the unholy alliance of this world war, because that really led to the creation of Al-Qaeda and many other things which you will figure out if you pick my book. And diverting a bit from there, I will take you a bit through the Timurids too, the Mughals. Now, There's a case here. The case is that if I ask you that who destroyed the Ram Mandir, you can give an answer, please. You can go loud and tell. Who destroyed the Ram Mandir of Bharatiya? You know, you have fallen the trap of the Muslims where they wanted you. There was the inscription to build a case that the mosque goes as old as 1526-28. They forced the inscription so badly that even the name of Babur was written wrong. And that's the reason why in the court we could not even prove that who destroyed the temple, because we were in the trap of the Muslims. We were trying to find the Babur as the villain. I'm not saying that Babur is a good guy. He's a bad guy for sure. But he did not demolish the temple. The temple's demolition was commissioned by Aurangzeb. And if you read the inscription, if you know the Farsi, if you know the language, you can make it out. Everything is out there. So, the point I'm trying to make is that we have fallen trapped to a lot of myths, which is also a manufactured myth from many other sides, which we felt that this is a good thing because you felt that you have found your villain, Babur is your villain. But you were taken for the ride because even our historians did commit the mistake of following Anne Beveridge Suzanne's translation, who was a translation of Babur Nama, but she was responding to a reporting manager who were British. Britishers hated Hindus and Muslims equally. For them it was important to vilify the Mughal Empire, which was the immediate predecessors of them. So they did what they could, and we fall in the trap because we did not know the language. We just followed the translation and felt, oh, this is the point. But that was not the point, and we have been taken through the ride. All I can sum it and say is that history is a very important subject. It can be weaponized very much against us. It's important to learn the language if you want to go into the history. Otherwise, history will always be the secondary sources, and we will fall flat. It's very important that we also. Thank you.
Thank you, Abbas. Continuing, we are fortunate to hear what narrative you ought to know on the extremely varied subjects, okay? And that's going to continue. So I would like to request now Venkatesh Rangan to present his presentation. You can do from there also, yeah, as you see, as you like. Should we go down? Should we go down that everyone can see it, okay? Thank you.
Hello. So firstly, I would like to thank Udhbhavaha and Rangan for inviting me to this really confluence of intellectual conference out here. And I'm really honored to be part of the KS Narayanacharya Sammana Sabhe and the Lit Festival. So today I will be talking about a narrative. The presentation. So this would be something which you would not have heard, or which generally a lot of people till today disbelieve in, and across the spectrum. It's not just the Romila Kappers in the world. A lot of us unconsciously also disbelieve in, right? So, yeah. So this is based on a book which I had written called Bharat's Military Conquest in Foreign Lands. Okay, and I'll start off with a very basic statement, and I would like to know your views on this statement. Next slide. Throughout our history, or even if you take the past 1,300 years, invaders have attacked Bharat repeatedly. Okay, Muhammad bin Qasim, Muhammad Ghazni, Babur, etc., Alauddin Khilji, whatever. Invaders attacked Bharat repeatedly, but kings of Bharat, Hindu kings, never thought of attacking those invaders' country. So Hindu kings never said that let's attack Baghdad, let's attack Samarkand. You know, we are always defensive people. We are brave people, we are defensive people. How many of you think this is, or how many of you resonate with it? Now, even I used to believe in this. Yeah? And honestly, this is a very common thought, right? I mean, there are different interpretations. Some people, you know, the people who hate Bharat will say that we are very weak people. People who love Bharat will say we are very peaceful people. But the good, I would say the common point between rightist, leftist, dharmic, adharmic, nationalist, anti-national is people believe that we never attacked that invader's country, right? So before 2016, when 26/11 happened, when Mumbai was attacked by terrorists, people said India showed strategic restraint and maturity. A lot of the American analysts were saying, we didn't attack Pakistan. So great peaceful country, we didn't attack Pakistan. Whatever we did, right? Next. Second statement. China and Bharat were friends till the 20th century. Till 1962, there is no record of a conflict in mainland China. So the China which we know today never existed in history. Right? I'll come to that in a bit. But mainland China, where you have Beijing, Shanghai, Guangdong, that had no military action of any Bharatiya or Hindu ruler. Right? That's generally what is called. So we are all accepting now that Cholas conquered Southeast Asia. Because Southeast Asia was also Hindu, Cholas were also Hindu. Southeast Asia is not geopolitically significant. So fine, people say Lalita attacked Tibet, they'll have a region as a refugee. But did we attack China and have conquest in mainland China? Did we attack Arabia, Baghdad, Iraq? Generally speaking, no, right? So today I want to break this myth. I honestly felt the same thing. When I was actually approached by somebody from the Indian Navy, an extremely senior officer in the Indian Navy, I would like to take the name. But he told me that whenever we in the Navy go and do exercises with other countries, right? We have quad grouping, we do with Americans, we do Australians. He told me these guys come and they have no history themselves, but they talk about maritime, I would say philosophy, historic maritime philosophy of Australian Navy. You know, the Chinese have one guy called Shen He. He was some guy who kind of ended 14th century. They have made a whole set of exhibitions. The Chinese government is sponsored across the world. How the Chinese went to Africa, they took tribute from Africa. So he said, why don't we have something like that? So that is what spurred my interest. And what I found is there is overwhelming evidence in Arabic, Persian, Chinese, and on very own Bharatiya sources which talk about active military operation and conquest in all these countries. Right? So what I do today is, in my book I have talked about 21 such expeditions. This was 2 years ago. I have found many more than in the past 2 years, but since we have paucity of time, I'll stick to 4 expeditions in this presentation today. But I'll go through each and every source, bit by bit, year by year, so we actually understand the depth of the facts we have in these basically different sources, right? So first I have talked with our own Imani Publication, Sahitya Prakashana, Chalukya Publication is second. His naval strike Iraq. Okay? All these are post-Islamic. So I'm talking after the Islamic Caliphate has come in. Next I talk about Pratihara naval raids on Basra, Zulfar, Gibba and Fars. Then Parmara conquest against the Ghaznavids, right? So why are all these significant? Like we believe Muhammad Ghazni attacked Somnath, right? Muhammad Ghazni's descendants attacked Bharat many times. Did any Hindu ruler think of attacking Central Asia, Turkestan, Turkey? So very important expedition. And finally, Chinese texts which themselves talk about the iron, what they call the iron-wheeled monarchs in the Chinese concept. They give a list of different kings and emperors, and there are several kings from Bharat that iron-wheeled monarchs who ruled China, and a very term iron-wheeled means somebody who ruled with a sword. So I'll come to these in a bit. I'll start with the first one. Okay. I think everybody here knows about Imani Puligeshi, right? I mean, he's a hero, you would say, one of the most powerful emperors of our Bharatiya history, right? But very few people know about his expedition in the Al-Faw Peninsula, Iraq. Firstly, what is this Al-Faw Peninsula? What is Iraq? Next slide. So all of you know this is a map of the Middle East, right? So you have Iraq out there. If you see the Persian Gulf, this stretch of water is called the Persian Gulf. And overhead here you have Kuwait. And this part, right, which is in the head of the Persian Gulf, is called Al-Faw Peninsula. Very important for oil. Iraq is, I think, one of the second or third largest producers of oil. Right? Much of the refineries are present in Al-Faw. That is why historically, Al-Faw has always been the site of bloody battles. Till today, till the 21st century. Right? So, if I look at the modern times, Iraq war. The bloodiest battles in Iraq are on the Al-Faw Peninsula. In fact, the use of chemical weapons, which was one of the features of the Iraq-Iran war, allegedly the Al-Faw Peninsula. When the Iraqi forces recaptured Al-Faw, Saddam Hussein declared a national holiday. That was the extent of the victory. When the Americans invaded Iraq and toppled Saddam Hussein, the bloodiest battle in which 2 crack special forces units, the American Marine Commandos and the UK Special Forces, actually operated was on Alpha Peninsula. Again, oil, refineries, and as you can see that map, which you can also see out here, it is the only outlet to the sea for the entire Middle Eastern region, right? So if the entire fertile belt, which is called the Tigris-Euphrates belt, where the main agricultural produce and it is grown, the main outlet to the sea is actually from the Alpha Peninsula, right? So now why are we talking about this Alpha Peninsula and why are we talking about Iraq? Next slide. Because let's introduce ourselves to this one Arabic Islamic theologian called Abu Jafar Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, right? He was there from 839 to 923 CE. He is a renowned polymath in Islamic circles. So a guy who wrote a Tasfir, he interpreted the Quran. Okay. He also wrote a historical work called Tariq al-Rasulullah al-Mulk. Now, if you ever track the I would say the Islamic lyrics, etc., they call his works Itihasa, very credible, very objective. Now, this person never visited Bharat, right? He was in North Africa. He was in Baghdad. He settled in Baghdad during the time of the Abbasid Caliphate, which is the most powerful, I would say, empire of Islamic history. In fact, this person had a lot of prejudice against Hindus. He openly expresses it. He calls them these are kufr, they are kind of whatever. But why am I suggesting all this? That it's very important to understand the personality of a guy who is actually giving us a lot of communication between the first caliphs and his commanders, and also giving his own interpretations, and also naming the king, but because of which you get connected to Chalukya communication. So what Tabari does is, in his work, he talks about the rise of Islam and about Islamic history. He gives a year-wise expansion of the Islamic empire. So all of you know that Islam arose in Saudi Arabia, which is in the basically the 7th century, late 6th, early 7th century. About year 11 of the Islamic calendar, the founder of Islam passed away. And after him, his father-in-law, Abu Bakr, became the Caliph. So he's considered to be the first Caliph. And there was a round of great expansion. And in fact, in a span of 20-30 years, they wiped out the entire Persian, Mesopotamian, North African civilization and reached up to Europe, Spain. In fact, actually Spain also. They reached up to China. It is in Xinjiang province, right to the east. So year by year, between year 12 and year 16, Tabari talks about a lot of military activity involving a certain king of Al-Hind, or a certain king of India. So let's see exactly what happened. So if we start from the 12th year of the Islamic calendar, we have Caliph Abu Bakr, who writes to his commander called Khalid bin Walid. Now this Khalid bin Walid is an undefeated commander of the Arabs. Basically, he has fought 100 battles and been undefeated, right? So Caliph Abu Bakr says that we have to spread Islam, we have to spread our authority. So we have to attack Iran, and obviously capture these areas, right? So the first area we should capture is the Al-Faw Peninsula. Now in year 12, he first writes a letter saying that we begin with Farj al-Hind, which is Al-Ubula. Okay, so if you look at the Al-Faw Peninsula, about 100 kilometers from the Persian Gulf, there's a place called Al-Ubula, right? Now this Caliph refers it to as a gateway to India or gateway to Hind, Farj-e-Hind, right? And he tells him, you begin with that, that's the most critical strategic part. Once you capture that, you can destroy the entire Persian Empire, right? So Khalid bin Walid in year 12, which corresponds to 633 CE, goes and sets up camp in that particular Al-Faw Peninsula. You can see the green triangles. There's a waterway called Shatt al-Arab. So Khalid bin Walid goes and sets up out there, right? His objective is to wipe out all resistance, conquer this territory, and then go into Iraq, Iran, and conquer it again, right? For some reason, however, he's not able to do that. So we have a second communication which says the gateway of India, okay, was the most important and strongly guarded, and the commander had to fight the Bedouins on land and Bharatiya al-Hind, or the navy of Hind on the sea. So in year 12, this particular area was under attack on two fronts, by the Arabs from the land and by a Bharatiya navy on the sea. Now there are different translations to it. Bharatiya al-Hind, because Bharatiya is actually a sea in Bahar is a sea in Arabic. So you could actually read that the Hindis were attacking from the sea, or R.C. Majumdar translates it as a navy, because it's the ocean of the Hind. So year 12, the situation is Khalid bin Walid setting up camp in Al-Faw, but this garrison is being attacked by a unknown kind of navy from Al-Hind. Now, which is this navy from Al-Hind? Why are they attacking Al-Faw? What is the reason? Let's dwell a little more deeper. We go to next year. In year 13 of the Islamic calendar, there is no record, right? So, remember in year 12, Khalid bin Walid is given a task of conquering, capturing and wiping out this area. In year 14, the next Caliph, who's Caliph Umar, recounts that the previous attempt was unsuccessful. So nothing happened. For some reason, these guys retreated. Who was the Arabs of Khalid bin Walid? They kind of retreated, right? So now Caliph Umar ibn Khattab talks to a very senior Islamic commander called Udhbhavaha ibn Ghazwan al-Masidi. Now Udhbhavaha is one of the guys who is a close companion of Muhammad, when Muhammad used to be alive. So obviously he had a very high rank among the different Arabs. So he is given a command of 2,000 Banu Tasif, one of the most fanatical, ferocious Arabic warriors, and told, this time you should go and be successful, capture this Al-Faw Peninsula. But a very interesting thing happens here. Initially, in the year 12 letter, the record is of the Al-Basra and about Farjih. Here he introduced a term as Ard al-Hind. Please go and capture Ard al-Hind. So that there is no confusion, Tabari writes, at that point of time, Al-Basra, or the Al-Faw Peninsula, came to be called as Ard al-Hind. So between year 12 and year 14, we see that the Al-Faw Peninsula is now called Ard-e-Hind. Ard-e-Hind means land of Bharat, land of India, land of Hind. And Farjih-e-Hind is the gateway to it. So both these things kind of survive, right? So year 14, we have Udhbhavaha going there. So Udhbhavaha ibn Ghazwan goes there to capture the city, and there's a great fight which happens. Next year. Now we go to next year, year 15. Okay. Now the Caliph, the Caliph Umar ibn Khattab decides that we need to have a al-Amsar or a garrison. Okay. So in this garrison, he writes that now great battle has happened called the Battle of Kasalia, in which the Persians have been wiped out. So Iran is no longer in contention. So the Caliph writes that we are going to be under attack by the Shahanshah al-Hind. The king or the emperor of al-Hind is going to attack us along with the king of Oman. So for that, please build an al-Amsar in the mouth of the Tigris or Euphrates. Right? If you just go back earlier to the map. So he said out here, in the peninsula and stretches, build a garrison so that you can defend this area from this attack of the Shahanshah al-Hind, the emperor of Hind. Okay? And the defeated Persians should not get help from these people. Right? So that's what happens in the 15 al-Hijra. Next. Okay. So I will first go through all the evidence and then I will pin together a story which actually happened. So in 16 al-Hijra, we find another communication which says that the Arab force has to retreat about 15 kilometers inland from any water body, right? And at least 130 kilometers away from the shore. So earlier in last year or the previous year, in year 15, the Arab garrisons were in the mouth of the Tigris Euphrates. Now they are going back 130 kilometers. So effectively what is happening is, we have the same dynasty, one of the most powerful caliphs of the Islamic Empire, who could defeat Spain, who could defeat Africa, who could defeat Central Asia, right? But they are unable to capture a small peninsula, and they have to ultimately retreat about 130 kilometers because of this military action of this one Shahanshah al-Hind. So the question really arises, who is this great king of, let's say, Bharat, who could actually go 3,000 kilometers to our west, who could go to Iraq and actually force these people to retreat, right? Now, there are many other details in the 16 al-Hijra communication. For example, Udhbhavaha says that the Odishan al-Amsar could not be situated in Alubula also. So I think I won't get into details. So going next. Yeah. Now we find that in the same year, the Omanis are completely suppressed. And the Arabs attacked Thana and Barbas or Broch, right? Both of which are under the Chalukyan territories. But these attacks are unsuccessful or they are repulsed. And finally in 17 al-Hijra, the Al-Basra al-Amsar is created 15 kilometers inland. Right? Now all these evidences, what is the meaning of all this? We'll go next. Right? Now, and who is this king of Al-Hind who basically has had this daring and this bravery actually to attack the Arabs in Iraq, right? Now, in year 5 of the Islamic calendar, fortunately for us, the same author, Muhammad ibn Jarir Tabari, gives the name of the Narayanacharya, right? And this name he gives as Furumisha. Now, this Furumisha is generally taken by historians to mean Pramesha, Parameshwara, or Pulapisha. It can be either one, right? So, this king of Al-Hind we are looking for has to be somebody who is powerful enough to be called the emperor of the entire Al-Hind. B, who has a naval force which can reach Iraq. C, has complete control over the western coast, right? Because that's when the resources can be used to send. Has relations with the Sassanians and has a title of Parameshwara. So that is effectively who we are looking for. And if you look at it, the one emperor who fits all these qualifications is none other than Imadi Publication, right? Sahitya Prakashana. That's effectively. Now, when we have all this, do we have any evidence from the Bharatiya side? I feel that the Aihole inscription needs to be reassessed or reviewed based on the very pointed Arabic and Persian references which we have actually given in earlier. If you look at the Aihole inscription, there's one line that says Apara Jaladhira Lakshmi Yasmin Puri. There is a Puri or a town or a city or a port in a Apara Jaladhira Lakshmi, which is called the Lakshmi of the Western Sea. You know, the Western Sea basically, which is kind of a fortune of the Western Sea. Now, historians have generally interpreted this to seem that there is some place in the western coast of Bharat. In fact, they say this is nothing but the Kharapuri or Elephanta Island, which was the capital of the Mauryas of Konkan. Now, there are significant, I would say, contradictions in this view. Firstly, no excavation in Elephanta Island has proved there to be a secular or a capital settlement of the Mauryas of Konkan. B, nothing in the Elephanta Island shows that it was a port used for war. Elephanta Island has a temple. There's a temple named Lord Shiva, it's the temple to Shiva. The question really arises is why should A, Chalukya Publication actually attack a religious place? B, is there a need for him? Because the Aihole Prashasti very clearly says that the Chalukyan navy surrounded this island and there were no less than there were 100 ships which are used by Chalukya navy. If you look geographically at Elephanta Island, it cannot support such a sustained or large naval operation, right? So effectively, we are looking at a certain port in the Western Sea, in our upper Samudra, which is Lakshmi, which had a lot of potential for trade, and which basically, I would say, involved a lot of naval operations. So my sense is that this actual verse of the Aihole Prashasti actually talks about this expedition. In fact, descendants of Chalukya Publication, Rajashri Datta, in his time there's an inscription which says that the Parasikas actually paid Datta or tribute to the Chalukyas. So obviously there is some echo of all the what are written in Arabic sources in the Chalukyan sources. You go next. So let me piece together what exactly happened, right? All these are sources, but let's come to the narrative. Right? The narrative is as follows, right? Bharatiya traders had a huge trade network since ancient times. This is a well-known fact. Commercially, they had a huge trade network, right? Udhbhavaha ibn Ghazwan himself says that among the communities who traded in Alukula included Al-Hind, Omanis, Persians, etc. So it is obvious that our traders went there, and they went there, they would have stayed there, they would have built some temples, they would have built some residences, etc. So there was a colony of Hindu merchants in Iraq. Now we have this proved by Tabari himself, who talks about specific Indian communities called Sabajiya and Jats, right? Some of them are from Sindh, but some of them are also from Al-Hind, right? So the Arabs used to distinguish them from the 8th century onwards. So the fact that there was a merchant community in this area, and that's also the reason why this area was called as Farj, the gateway to Bharat, because the trade to India and the largest, I would say, trade flow which happened from Bharat on to Iran used to happen in the Alubula port. So when the Caliphate rose, it is obvious, given the expansion of the Caliphate, that they had a focus on this Al-Saud Islam. It disrupted and destroyed trade. And because of this trade, the Indian merchants needed some succor, they needed some protection. Who will protect them? There was a disturbed condition. The Persian Empire is falling, the Caliphate soldiers are rising. So you needed some protection of these merchants. Right? As the Aihole inscription itself says, right? Utsaha Prabhu Mantra Shakti Sahite Deva Dvijan Vadapi Nagaram Rakshi. So, Utsaha, as per the Arthashastra, any great Chakravarti has Utsaha Shakti, Mantra Shakti, Prabhava Shakti. Utsaha, you need to have energy, proactive energy. You can't just be sitting back and saying, let the enemy attack, I will attack. Secondly, Mantra Shakti. This Utsaha has been to be formed for proper formal policy. You need to have an army, you need to have tactics, you need to decide on how to attack it from a long-term perspective. And Prabhava Shakti, Prabhava, you should show your influence, your strength. What they call to as power projection in military terms. You should be able to show your strength so much that your enemies will right? So as per the IOD, our Satyashraya Parmeshwar Chalukya had all these three parameters. He had Utsaha Shakti, he had Prabhu Shakti, he also for Deva and Vijit, for protection of Brahmanas, protection of let's say our culture, for protection of Dharma. His Vatapi Nagaram was a safe place. And that is why a lot of these merchants actually came to Imadi Pulakeshi, telling him, please protect us. And this is the reason for these operations which are basically launched at that point of time. He should be aware that at that point of time, Chalukya Pulakeshi had defeated Harshavardhana and Mahendra Pallava. So he qualifies to the title of Shenshai again. He was the most powerful ruler of Bharata at that point of time. Why do we not find references after year 70? This was a time of 640 when the Chalukyas got to a protracted struggle with the Pallavas, with Narasimhavarma Pallava also coming in. So that perhaps explains in Chalukya and Pulakeshi's own death, which happened, a few years later, perhaps explains why we don't find any reference after the Islamic year 16 or 17 for Chalukya. So this is dealing with, let's say, Imadi Pulakeshi, who was truly, I would say, the most powerful, one of the most powerful of our Hindu rulers, and I would say a very unique ruler in this sense. I'll quickly go to next. Sorry if I think I will be running out of time. About 200 years after Imadi Pulakeshi, there was another great naval expedition launched across the Middle East. Right? We again have three different inscriptions and literary sources of this, from Iraq, from Oman, and from our Bharat also. Right? So I'll quickly go into that. So after, if you look at Islamic history, after the Rashidun Caliphate and the Umayyad Caliphate, there was a golden period of Islamic history in a dynasty called the Abbasid Caliphate. Right? There were two rulers of this caliphate called Harun al-Rashid, who was very famous, in what is called the Arabian Nights book, and Caliph al-Mamun. Right? Now, under these two caliphs, right, a renewed attempt was made to conquer territories in Bharat. Right? So the Arabs had conquered since 712 CE. Post that, at about let's say 800 to CE, they made renewed attempts to conquer the different areas of Bharat. Right? So they were met in opposition to a dynasty called the Pratiharas. Okay. The Pratiharas came essentially from, let's say, the origin is basically from the Abu region, as they call it, Rajasthan-Gujarat border. But later they captured Kannauj. So the Kannauj was the capital. And they formed an empire across North India, which included also parts of Saurashtra. Right? So among the Pratihara rulers, there was a king called Nagabhatta. He's called in history as Nagabhatta II. Right? So effectively, all these evidences point to a fight between these Abbasid caliphs, okay, Caliph al-Mamun, Imam Hassan bin Abdullah, who is considered the greatest ruler of Iran, and obviously Pratihara Nagabhatta. So what does this actually, all these inscriptions and epigraphs shall present to you in a moment talk about? So they basically talk about that there was an attack from the province of Sindh by the Arabs to places in the interior of Bharat. In order to counteract it, the Pratiharas launched a naval expedition to cut what is called the supply lines. Now, the ports of Oman, UAE, present UAE, and Basra were the main staging ports for main material to go to Sindh. Right? So if you hit these ports and you cut them off, you cut the supply lines to basically coming into Sindh. So the Pratiharas actually hit these sea lanes of communication, right? And they're very successful in that. So to give some more details, I'll go to the actual sources next time. So firstly, there's something called the Gopatri Prashasti, the Gwalior inscription. Now, very interestingly, in the verse 22, right? It talks about the crossing of the Apara Samudra. Okay, so it gives an allegory. It says that just like Prabhu Sri Ram crossed the ocean, okay, to basically for the sake of dharma and to get back Mata Sita, and he fought Ravan, was basically a dharma. Similarly, we had Nagabhatta and his son, Tat Janme Ramanam, his son, he was born as Rama, he didn't necessarily grow up to be a lad. He crossed this ocean and he fought cruel people who basically Ashwabala, who had great strength in their horses and who were against Dharma. In this, Ramabhadra is very clearly called Dharma Rakshaka. He is a fellow who defended Dharma. Right? So, this is a very detailed sloka. Very interestingly, it says the objective of the expedition was to get back Rajya Lakshmi. Just like Prabhu Sri Ram, he went to fight and I would say liberate Mata Sita. Nagabhatta and Ramabhadra went to get back their Rajya Lakshmi. Now, what is the concept of Rajya Lakshmi? In a kingdom, Rajya Lakshmi is sovereignty. Okay? So, suppose somebody attacks you, suppose somebody destroys your temples, suppose somebody kind of, your sovereignty, your self-respect is attacked, right? Your sovereignty is attacked, your good fortune is attacked. So, it's not just a matter of defense. You have to, set that, I would say, you have to, put a deterrence for that. In fact, the same institution says, Sama Dana Bheda Vihina. Ananya sadhana, adhina, pratapa, ananya pratapa dinamata. That is, when Sama, Dana and Bheda, they actually became vihina. So he was bereft of the Sama, Dana, Bheda. Effectively, he had exhausted the option of diplomacy, putting, let's say, covert operations, or of, let's say, giving gifts. He had to only resort to ananya pratapa in order to restore the defense of his kingdom. So we go next. So the question is, we have a very clear reference of Nagabhatta actually carrying out an expedition across the sea. So is there any corresponding reference in Arabic or English words? So we have a book, we have two works. We have one work called Tufat al-Ayan, Bi Sirat al-Uman. Right? Now as per this, this work is actually a collection of different chronicles by Abdullah ibn Humayd in the 19th century, but he takes a lot of old chronicles of Oman and he compiles them together. In this, there are two references made. One is that Kufar of Al-Hind, who came in Barijas, who were called Bawarij, hampered the regions of Oman, plundering and taking prisoners towards Al-Iraq and Al-Furs. Right? So basically, there was a kind of lot of raid which was happening in Iraq and Iran. Okay? And these people came towards what is called as Zulfar and Dibba. Now, Zulfar is in present day United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, that is Zulfar. And Dibba is the Musannan Peninsula, which is in Oman. Right? So these Kufra of Al-Hind, the Kafirs of Al-Hind, they came basically to this area, and Ibn al-Hasan had to build a navy, and he built huge ships, right, to defeat these people. He could not defeat them, but he was able to protect the civilian population, right. This is what the Arabic source says. I'll come to what the truth is in a bit. So we have some reference of an Indian military attack around the time when Nagabhatta says he crossed the ocean, right? Now they use the word Bawarij, people say Bawarij is pirates, but we have to understand that Arabs generally use such terms for all Hindu kings. For example, Dahar Singh was also called a Bawarij or a pirate. So going next, at the same time we have one more text from Iraq, go next, which says that a fleet of Al-Barija or assault vessels from Al-Hind came and attacked Basra and Al-Furs. And 50 of Ibadi missionaries were actually killed in this process. Right? Now, certain Arabic historians have interpreted this to mean there was a lot of loot and there was killing. But we have to understand who these Ibadi missionaries were. Now, these were religious people, but not religious people like what we know. Right? So, we are not monks, we are not people who believe in Ahimsa, etc. These are people who carried a sword. And they used to spread the religion by the means of a sword. Right? So, what this text says, a seerah, was a letter written by this missionary in Basra who says that we had collected there in Basra to go to the different, I would say, pagan or Kafir lands to spread, but we were attacked in Basra itself and 50 of us were killed. That is exactly what the result of the battle is. So, if you go next. So, what does all this mean together, right? So, all this means, if I can put a piece together, a story together, what we have is that under the most powerful of the Islamic caliphs, attack was launched in Bharat from Sindh. The Pratiharas counter-attacked the attack in land, but they also used the sea to attack the enemy's territory itself. In Basra, in Zulfar, in UAE, in Iran, in UAE, etc. to cut the supply lines of communication. They were pretty effective in that because we know for sure that Eastern Sindh was liberated from the Muslim control and went into Pratihara control after that. In fact, we have Sulaiman, an Arab traveler, who says Sindhu passed through the Pratihara dominions. right? So it was effective in liberating Eastern Sind. Western Sind broke off the Caliphate and became dissolved into two small kingdoms, out of which only two cities, Bansura and Multan, remained with the Islamic rulers. Right? So that was the effect of this expedition. Now, why is it the entire Sind was not liberated? That's a question that will come to later. So effectively, we have one more evidence or example of a Hindu ruler going and actually attacking the most powerful Islamic caliphate, which is basically Itihasa and Narayanacharya. If you go next. So just I'll quickly cover the Parmara Congress also. So in the Nagpur State Museum, right, you have an inscription, okay, which is a pretty lengthy inscription. If you go next, it is dated 1161 Vikram Samvat, right? This is also called the Nagpur Museum Small Inscription or Nagpur Prashasti. Now this inscription talks about a king called Lakshma Deva, a Parmara king called Lakshma Deva, and his brother Narayanacharya. Now we know the example of Prabhu Shri Ram and Bharat, right? When Prabhu Shri Ram went to Vanvas, Bharat ruled the kingdom with his Prabhu Shri Ram's I would say slippers actually on the throne. So this is a very interesting example in Kali Yuga where Lakshma Deva went to fight the invaders of Bharat, and his brother ruled in the name of Lakshma Deva till the time he came back. So as per the inscription legend, and when Lakshma Deva came back, he did not collect him, even he gave up his kingdom. So Lakshma Deva actually then made Naravarman the king, saying that no, you have done selfless service. I want to continue fighting and continue doing expeditions. But what is this verse 454 of this inscription tells us? This verse 54 tells us a very interesting thing. Now let's not forget this is coming after the period of Muhammad Ghazni. So Muhammad Ghazni has come. He has destroyed the Somnath temple. He has looted a lot of kingdoms. Right? His descendants are there. Now this inscription tells us that Vangshu Kanthasthale, or on the banks of the Vangshu river, Sthala, a camp or a location. Okay? So the Vangshu river is a river which is for the Oxus river, a river which is in the boundaries of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. There are a lot of people who try to interpret saying Vangshu is Sindhu. There is no text which says Sindhu and Vangshu are the same. Right? Vangshu is a very clear meaning and interpretation which is Oxus river. Right? So Vangshu Kanthasthale, so this king, he is positioned in the Vangshu Kanthasthale. What does it do in Vangshu Kanthasthale? You can say Khelot Khat Turishka Datta Vilasat Vaha Benigre. So basically the Turishkas are there, the Turks are there, they have given Datta of the horses, their horses as tribute after being defeated or after being wiped out. Very interestingly, it also talks about the Kesha. All the horses have Kesha or saffron on their body, which they are rolling and getting those saffron out, basically. And at that same time, there is a Kiradipati, there is another king who was caged like a parrot by this Turishkas, who was singing the praises of this Parmara. Right? So, very interesting, unique inscription in verse 54, which talks about an Indian king in a camp somewhere in Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and who has defeated the Turks. And which Turishkas? We are talking about, and I'll talk about that later on what those enemies. If you go next. So, why is Vangshu Kanthasthale very important? In Uzbekistan, there is a place called Termes. Okay? So, if you look at about the map, actually shows it. This Termes was the most important religious center for all Turkish sultanates, wherever they are. Whether they be the Seljuk Turks in Turkey, in Iran, in Uzbekistan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Afghanistan, this was the most important religious center for them. So, you can say just maybe not as much as Somnath was for the Hindus, but it's a very important religious center for the Turkish Muslims for them, right? So there were three Islamic Turkish sultanates who had vowed to defend this Turkish. One was the Yamini Turks, who is Muhammad of Ghazni and his descendants. Second was the Seljuk Turks, who ruled over a large part of what is called the Persian Empire in the west, right? Third was what is called the Kara Khanates, or guys who ruled over the Uzbekistan area, right? So this Termes is also a place where you can see you have a lot of saffron fields. It's a very area famous for saffron fields. So this area in Termes and the southern area in Balkh is where you have a lot of saffron fields, and it's exactly where the geography of the Vangshu or Oxus river is in an area of plains where a camp can be actually set up. If you look at the way the river flows. So if you go next. So what we are talking about exactly is that after Muhammad of Ghazni, Okay, now his descendants ruled over part of Punjab. In 1035 and 1043, the Hindu kings actually launched offensives and tried and captured, let's say, a lot of parts of eastern Punjab. But around, basically around the end of, let's say, the 11th century, Paramara Lakshmadev launched a counter-offensive against these kingdoms and actually reached up to Vamsha-Kandastali, which is in Turkey, right? So this was a counter-offensive way. So he was in striking distance of the main religious center of these Turkish settlements. Now the question is, while we have such an explicit Sanskrit inscription, is there any corresponding Muslim sources which kind of corroborate this? Now interestingly, at the same time, Felishta in his work says that there is a discord in the reign of the contemporary Turkish ruler, that is Alauddin. When did Alauddin actually ascend the throne? And he says there's a difference of 1 decade in different scholars, right? If you go to another, let's say, Islamic source, they also say that there was a period of confusion of 15 years in the chain of reign. So this is exactly the time when we also find the same inscription. So there is a lot of merit in the fact that there was actually a live military action which actually took place and went to the heart of Turkestan. Now there are a lot of criticisms to this. So people say that this could be an exaggeration or a copy of the Raghuvansa. So in my work, I actually compared the Raghuvansa and the Nagpur Prashasti. And to be honest, the Raghuvansa talks about Raghu's campaign against the Hunas. So Raghu goes to the northern area, which is the area of Udhbhavaha, and then he fights the Hunas, and it says that in the Hun camp, in the Han camp, the women of the Han camp used to practice a ritual called scarring. So their cheeks were red because they kind of scarred their cheeks. There is no similarity between the Raghuvansha and the content of this Nagpur Prashasti. As I told you, the only similarity is the Vanshu river and the mention of Ashwa, or horses. Now this can be there in any other place. For example, if I write a book on Bengaluru and you write a book on Bengaluru, and the common word is Bengaluru, it doesn't effectively mean that I have copied your book. The second logical point is, if it was so easy to copy the Raghuvansa, why did any other Hindu king copy the Raghuvansa? Right? Because everybody was inspired by the Venkatesh outline. So all this supports and suggests the fact that Paramara Lakshmadev actually had this expedition and actually kind of went up to this place. Go next. Yeah. So we again have one more hero we know nothing about. Okay? And we have not even researched. So there are people who don't even want to research this area, who want to actually understand why these clues are there, why these clues are actually coming into us. Go next. Before I go to fundamental questions which come out of this entire narrative, what is, I'll close on that. There are different evidences of Bharat's military and political rule in mainland China. I will not go in detail because of the paucity of time. So we have something called Ayuan Jin of Emperor Wu of Liang, which talks about a song of the Mauryas. So in which the Mauryas claim that the whole earth is under one umbrella. They have come, there's a worship and veneration of things, different things basically. There's a Tang official called Chang Yue. Chang Yue talks about the different types of emperors. There are 4 continents as per the Chinese kind of mention. Pan Chu Hua is a continent which includes 4 areas. Land of men, which they call as China. Land of elephants, which is basically India. And there's land of wealth and something else, right? But the important thing is land of men, China, they say is the best. That is anyway as per the Chinese rules. But this Chang Yue says that there is one type of emperor called the Iron Wing monarch who unites all these 4 territories together. There is land of men, land of I would say elephants, etc. Now, who are these emperors? Very interestingly, there are a lot of Mauryan people. There's a Gupta emperor. There are different kind of emperors of Bharat who are included in this list, basically, right? And then there are a lot of other details. For example, there's a detail of the Yuan period from Tan Chang, which talks about Ashwamedha Yagna. People from Patliputra following a horse, going to a place called Dianchi in southwestern China and establishing a kingdom out there. There's one by Ai Ziqiu, 17th century Ming Empire Tengchuan sub-prefecture, who is written a Gazette of a Tengchuan sub-prefecture, who says that there was a rule of the Bharatiya kings here and from Bharat, and they introduced rice, spiced rice, and that is why the aborigines of the place became called as Bai Fengmen, the people of the Patrons. So that's just too many details. I have paucity of time not to explain. But the most interesting thing out of these Iron Wing monarchs is what I want to have at least 2 minutes on. Please go next. Is another unknown Indian or a Hindu king called Udhbhavaha Govinda Chandra, right? Now, I don't think anybody would have heard of this king. How many people have heard of Govinda Chandra? Nobody. Trust me, there are 41 inscriptions of this king. This king's coins are found in Rawalpindi, Northwest Frontier, Pakistan. They are found in Afghanistan. In fact, so popular were his coins that 100 years after his death, Muhammad Ghori, who was one of the plunderers and invaders of Bharat, he restruck their coins. And what is the joke is, one very famous liberal secular historian, I think actually said that, see, Muhammad Ghori is so secular, he has kind of put Sri Lakshmi coins. But the reality is, the Gardner Bhuvaneshandra's coins are so famous, people were not willing to accept Muhammad Ghori's coins and he had to restruct them, but he could delete Sri Lakshmi's image from that coin. So that's a different story. But this Udhbhavaha Govindachandra is also very important for us today. In the Ram Janmabhoomi PS, there were a lot of evidences present in the portal. There was a temple before the mosque. One of the inscriptions which proved as a temple was that of this Udhbhavaha Govindachandra, right? But why is Udhbhavaha Govindachandra important to me? He's a man who has a lot of, I would say, interests or a lot of significance. But he is important because of a verse in Prakrit Paingalam. Prakrit Paingalam is a metric verse in Prakrit. It tells us that there was a king of Kashi, okay, who did Vyuha Rachana. Okay, he did Vyuha Rachana. Vyuha, so not different Vyuhas in the Mahabharata, right? You have Vyuha, Fatauta, you have Chakra Vyuha, the famous Chakra Vyuha, etc. So this king was obsessed with Vyuha Rachana, and what he did is, he went and in this Vyuha Rachana, he kind of captured Nepal. Then Bhota Raja Pitadachade is in Prakrit. So the Bhota Raja actually self-inflicted wounds. The Bhota, king of Tibet, self-inflicted wounds because he was defeated. And importantly, Bhujanja Vishya, China Darbahina Raja, Loha Avada Hakanda Padu. So Nepal, Bhota, then China Raja. China Raja Darbahina, his arrogance was out. He was out of the arrogance. And there was a huge amount of commotion when this king was defeated in battle. Right? Now this is a very unique verse. First and foremost, not a Prashasti. This is a Prakrit teaching text. So imagine in a Gurukul somebody will be teaching you the metrics and you'll be saying this is an example. For example, they're teaching you. So the very fact that this comes in such a text means that there's some credence to it. That somebody is talking about. Now, how is it that Udhbhavaha Govindachandra got associated with China? Now there is a theory to this, which I'll quickly conclude before I conclude my session. Udhbhavaha Govindachandra had an alliance with Kulatunga Chola. How do we know this? We have an inscription in Tanjavur where a sister of Udhbhavaha Govindachandra is married to a Chola prince, right? So Govindachandra is from Kannauj. He's a Rajput ruler from Kannauj. His sister marries a Chola prince and she gives an inscription in the Brihadeshwara temple of Tanjavur. So we established that this person was allied with Cholas. In Govindachandra's inscriptions, he fights all the enemies of the Cholas. So Eastern Mughals, Western Chalukyas, etc. Right? We know that Kulatunga Chola also had an active participation in Southeast Asia. In fact, that point of time the Chinese fort was divided into two factions. And one faction actually restricted the Ainu River, where the Chola merchants were trading out there. Right? So the theory which I have is possibly, since Udhbhavaha Govindachandra was such a close ally of Kulatunga Chola and the Cholas basically, it is probable that he participated in one of these expeditions against this particular faction of the Song Empire of Emperor Gaozan. And we know that Emperor Gaozan was actually defeated at least twice, and he had to flee his capital twice. So there are a lot of such, I would say, elements which are there. But a very interesting emperor who is an Iron King monarch is basically Udhbhavaha Govindachandra. So if you go next. So as I conclude, what do these narratives really tell us about? What is the fundamental questions we have, right? The first question people ask me is, if Hindu kings were so powerful that we go to Baghdad, we go to China, why were we not able to defend ourselves? Right? Because Babur came, he kind of looted our temples, he kind of destroyed our, I would say, things, right? So I know this again is a theory, but my answer for this is that the Hindu kings, if you look at the Padmaras or the Pratiharas or everywhere, they did not finish the job. If I just put it very crudely and as such. So that was always the concept of Dharma Vijaya, right? There always had Dharma Vijaya, Loka Vijaya, Asura Vijaya. Dharma Vijaya is somebody who forgives the person who asks for forgiveness, right? So for some reason they thought that the whole world was a Dharma. Somebody was telling in the morning session that we should be happy with the way our own Dharma history. That's very good. The problem is that a lot of people in the world don't want to be happy. They will cause a bomb blast, they will cause a Pahalgam terror. So you need to have a sharper Dharma to protect yourself so that others are happy, so you can fight it. So the concept of Dharma Vijaya had to be interpreted. Secondly, why is remembering our military conquest abroad so important? People say, what is the use of all this? Yeah, what okay, I think we went to Arabia, we have to understand that this subconsciously interprets our understanding today. To give you an example, our defense budgets. I was speaking to somebody from the Navy when I was actually, they supported me a lot in this book. So they told me that when you go to actually ask, and this used to be a bureaucratic example, right? When you go to somebody to ask, I want this particular equipment. The first question they'll ask is, it costs so much of money. Why do you want this? Is it for defense? Is it for offense? A military guy knows what is for defense and what is for offense. And I think as Sir has rightly said, you have to be sometimes an offense for your own defense. Right? So subconsciously we have this mentality that we are a very peaceful country, it's very good to be peaceful, it's not good to look at attacking others. We should not get into this mentality. Fortunately it has been changing now slowly and steadily, but even then, I mean, we have to understand that this is a continuous process. Right? It is not something which is just a one-off incident. Right? Secondly, I want to come to the last point before I conclude. Has academic prejudice against Hindu rulers been addressed at present? A lot of people tell me that the history of India is North-centric, Delhi-centric, it's against South, etc. Right? So I myself come in. I don't believe that history of India is what is anti-South or is North-centric or Delhi-centric. I believe it is anti-Hinduism. Right? Think about this, the Hardwala Govindra Chandra, right? Nobody knows about it. He's from Kannauj. Parmara Lakshmadev. And why? That because subconsciously we think that Hindu kings are small regional kings, right? We often make the statement that culturally we are always united, politically we are never united. It's a very stupid statement to me. Itihasa shows from the beginning that Ekarat Samrajya Chakravartiship was the ideal. Raghu, Sagara, Prabhu Shri Ram had to do Ashwamedha. Yudhishthira had to do Rajasuya and Ashwamedha. Right? So there was always an aspiration and you have to have political unity. The form of that may differ, it may not be centralized, it may be decentralized. But there was always a concept of political unity which was there. So I feel that this subconscious academic prejudice which is there, which is partitions Hindu rulers as small regional rulers, that is something which also in these narratives seem to be questioned. So that's about it. I'm sorry for taking a lot of time. Thank you.
That was a great lecture and something that I'm confident you have not heard before. I had not heard before. And that will also give us a good segue for what I wanted to say. But we have like about 30 minutes to conclude. So what I am going to do is just take 5 minutes for my session, if that's okay with you. Yeah. Okay? And we'll just take questions also. Not okay with us? Okay, let's see. But I'll make it shorter because this was absolutely fascinating. So we have to give us something because all of your questions may not be answered. They will not be answered anyways because there are lots of them. Okay, but we'll find a way, maybe with afterwards getting answers from them and communicating in some fashion. So I'll just use what Venkatesh Rangan said as a segue, which is to say there was this idea of a Chakravarti and Samrat, and they did a Ashwamedh, they did a Rajasuya. I'll just give you references to my talks, instead of giving the details. Like if you see the Rajasuya Yajna of Yudhishthira, that's about 7,500 years ago. So we are going like 5,000 years before some of the instances we saw. How many of you have heard of the World Bank study, Angus Madison study of a GDP of the world, right? So he did a study for 2,000 years from today going backwards. And something very impressive you see. Today, if you look at in the recent last 10 years, the GDP contribution of India is slowly getting bigger and so on. But if you go back like last 300 centuries, 400 centuries, and actually 1,000 years in the past, it was shrinking. And then if you go back all the way to 2000 years before, you will be surprised. In fact, exactly the year, let's say 0 of the Gregorian calendar. The country which contributed the most by the measure of GDP is India. You can check Angus Madison graph, do that. Now this is the time that we are talking that the Indian kings are conquering all over, extremely powerful kings, and contributing and doing the navigation and business and so on. Now we can just extrapolate, and we have to be very careful. But if you look at the Rajasya Yajna, essentially Yudhishthira's 4 brothers going in the 4 directions, you can literally take the map, look at the Sabha Parva, Mahabharata descriptions, and see where Nakul goes in the west direction, see where Arjun goes is kind of the northwest and the north direction, see where Bhima goes in the eastern direction, and Sahadev goes all the way to the south, the rest of India. So this is not something new. Actually, as you go back in the past, the story gets better and better. Okay, so now that's Mahabharata in short, and of course the Ashwamedha Yajna afterwards, but I'll skip the details after the war. But let's go further back in the past to about 14,000 years. That's the time of Ramayana. And of course, how do we get this time? Because all the codes, all the clues are given in these texts. The Mahabharata text, we have the clues. The Ramayana text, we have the clues. Many times I talk so much about astronomy clues in these texts. I talk astronomy because astronomy is the most accurate and precise science that we have. We have in the modern science world of last 500, 600 years, and we have this science in the entire humanity's quest of whatever that timeline is. But once we get this timeline, the question may be, is that all it that is out there? Actually not. So we may say all the astronomy descriptions of Mahabharata are descriptions of Mahabharata times, astronomy descriptions of Ramayana or of Ramayana times. But you can take away the word astronomy. You can simply say descriptions of Mahabharata text are descriptions of Mahabharata times. Descriptions of Valmiki Ramayana are descriptions of Ramayana times. And I just want to take one small event out of this Ramayana. How many of you, I can see a little bit, how many of you have had a chance to listen to one of my YouTube talk? I have given possibly 10 on that subject, called Sugriva's Atlas. Okay, so watch these people's hands. So afterwards, if you have any questions, you can ask them. But briefly, I just want to make a salient point, something very fascinating that matches with the geography and the geology and climatology that we know, and even the oceanography that we know of 14,000 years, and that perfectly matches with what Sugriva is saying about the world that he knew. Okay? Fast forward in the Ramayana, where Bhagwan Ram and Sugriva come together, and now they start searching for Sita. All the Vanaras are coming from different parts, and they are coming together in the capital of Vanara kingdom, that is Hampi Bellary now, the Kishkinda. In fact, many times people ask me, they're not interested in what I'm saying, they just want to know who are the Vanaras. Okay, so my easy answer, today I'm in Bengaluru, so I'll say that my easy answer is one of the great scholars that is sitting on the podium. I say, do you know my friend Dr. Shiva Shastri? They say, yeah, I have heard with him. I say, what is the capital of Vanara kingdom? They say, Kishkinda. I say, where is it today? They say, in Hampi Bellary, Karnataka. I say, the Vanaras look like Dr. Shiva Shastri. Okay? But I'm going to say, I have a lot of Kannadigas in front of me. I can say, you should have this question. Vanaras look like people from Karnataka. Actually, they were human beings, just like us. We are the descendants of those Vanaras. So those Vanara 4 parties come together, they are divided into 4 batches, and they are sent in the 4 directions. Before they go there, just like we set our GPS, or in the old times we used to look at the maps and kind of figure out which are the key points where I have to take a turn and so on and so forth. Sugriva is giving them instructions. Okay, Sugriva is giving them instruction what to follow in different directions. And just to briefly summarize what I want to say is, this is the book. Number of you have seen the talks. Those who have not seen the talks, take that as a homework. You can go and type in YouTube Sugriva's Atlas Nilesh Hope and you will get view. but it's something very fascinating, almost unbelievable, as much as unbelievable history that Venkatesh ji shared with us, because that's not what we have been taught. We have been brainwashed the other way. Sugriva knows in the east direction, starting with India as the center, okay, all the way to South America, with everything in between. So think of all the countries of the East Asia, like the Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Polynesia, and he might be knowing Australia. You know, it's not always the exact way to identify this, but all the way to South America, where even he's describing the structures, the petroglyphs. Everyone understands petroglyphs, like things engraved into the rocks. There is a petroglyph in South America, in a country called Peru. They call it Candelabra of Andes. And when the Spanish people came there 500 years ago, and when they asked them, like, what is this structure? Did you build it? They said, oh, we didn't do it. What about your grandparents? They did not do it. It was always there. Do you know why it was built? Nobody knows. It's almost unbelievable if I tell you that Ramayana describes what that structure is. Describes it so beautifully, you can actually look at that picture, and in the other hand, you can have Valmiki Ramayana, Kishkinda-kand, Sarga 39, 40, 41, 42, the description of the east direction. And if I had a picture, I would have shown it to you, but you can just check it afterwards. Tishira Arjanasketus Talastasya Mahatmana Stapita Parvatasya Agre Virajati Savidika. There cannot be a better description of that structure. It does not stop there. It even goes and explains why it was created, who created it, and what is its physical location. Purvasya Dishi Nirmanam Krutam Tatri Dasheshware Tatah Parakheva Maya Sriman Udaya Parvata. Like the Andes mountains is called Udaya Parvata. It's also called Ananta, right into Ramayana. And if you go to Bhagavad Puran, it is basically the Ananta mountain is described as a mountain in Patal. If you are not familiar with my work, you are not going to believe anything that I am saying right now. Okay? So that's what in the east direction. In the west direction, if you follow the geographical maps, it is a series of mountains and then some of the seas that you see. And he describes all the way until the Alps, the Switzerland. In the northern direction, he describes all the way up to the Arctic Sea, and in the southern direction, he describes all the way up to the Antarctica, including Antarctica. Now, of course, the Europeans will tell you they discovered Antarctica, right? But by the same logic, Europeans will also tell you they discovered you and me. And they discovered America and so on, and they discovered the Indians on that side too. Okay? So they will tell whatever they want to say, that is their narrative. Okay? But you can just look at it, and this is about 14,000 years ago. Something very interesting. When Sugriva describes up to the Alps, he says, I don't know anything beyond this. Beyond this meaning west of the Alps, which is what? Western Europe. He says, I don't know anything. In fact, his description is, it's all darkness, and I just don't have idea. There is no world out there. Don't go there. When he talks about South America, he has nothing to say about the North America. He doesn't say anything. He says, I don't know. This is all I know. Now that should surprise you. That he's talking all of these areas, including Arctic Sea and Antarctica. Arctic Sea, he says, Uttara Payasamnedi. Antarctica, he calls it capital of Yama. Yamasya Rajadhani. That is how he calls it. And he says, don't go there. By chance you may go there, but you will never come back. Actually, that's the word he uses. But the question is, why doesn't he not describe the Western Europe or North America? Very good. I said, because if you can go and check the map of the world 14,000 years ago, you will find practically most of the North America, all of Canada, and almost half of America, like the Ohio line or Wisconsin glaciers, you might have heard this, including all the 5 lakes, they were all under ice. So there is nothing to go there, 2 to 4 kilometer thick ice sheet. And if you look at the Western Europe, essentially the same condition. Think of most of the countries, maybe exception of Spain and Portugal and some of those places, everything else above was either under a complete sheet of ice or conditions like tundra and so on and so forth. Now what does that mean? I want to conclude. The conditions is this. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, now is what Patanjali Yoga Sutra has to do with it. I was teaching the Mahabharata astronomy some 7 years ago in one of the Indian universities. And when I was quoting Patanjali Yoga Sutra to understand how different people twist the knowledge in a different way, we call it Vritti. Right when the Patanjali Yoga Sutra begins, it talks of Vritti. They say, hey, Nilesh, if you like science, do it, but please don't bring Patanjali Yoga Sutra into it. But all our Darshan Shastras are meant to see, meant to perceive, meant to comprehend. Okay? If you look at Samadhi, now look at these three things. Other two words you might have heard, just I want to briefly mention. Emic versus etic. Etic is like the outsider looking at our culture. And the academics will tell you it's supposed to be objective. That's utter nonsense. Okay? So what is that outsider view? I'll tell you in a minute. But there is also the other people, our people say emic view. So whatever we think of our culture, that's what we should believe. Even that is also problematic. Okay? Just because we read something in our grantha and we immediately run with it and blindly believe it. In the morning session we had these great descriptions of too many people, too many sahasra. We heard about the sahasra and they said, can the yajna go for sahasra worship? But there is a way you can do it. How many of you have heard of sahasra avartan? Say for example Ganesha Atharva Shiksha. You can have 100 people chanting Atharva Shiksha, and if they do for what, 10 times or do the mathematics of 100 times or whatever, you can get whatever the number you want. So actually sometimes, say Ravana did tapasya for 1000 years, maybe whatever that critical infrastructure project he was doing, he had 1000 people to work with him. And you can, so there can be different interpretations. But you see a emic thing, which is our internal view, and we should trust it, I would say that's also not the right point. Because then we create all kinds of chaos, which is what we did, what is what the outsiders were critiquing for. External view objective, that is also another nonsense. But we have a Darshan Shastra, we have a 6th Darshan Shastra, and even if you want to add Buddhist, Jainism, and even Charvak, not a problem. That's the Pratyaksha. If you consider all these Darshan Shastra and start studying our text, you actually get a very realistic view. Patanjali summarizes that. I interpreted this, Patanjali. He says pramana. There is a vritti of using a pramana. He says pratyaksha anumana agama pramanani. If you use this formula, you will get close to the truth. You will actually get to the truth, if not a best approximation to the truth. But if you don't do that, then what happens? Which is what the etic position is. Outsiders' position is, that is what they have done in the last 200 years. Viparyayo mithya jnanam atat-drupa pratishtam. They created mythology. They call it mythology because they created it and then they say, this is a mythology. If you don't follow this pramana method, if you don't follow the scientific method, what you are going to get is basically viparyayo, opposite of that, which is a mithya. And then an emic approach that we think is ours, that's fine, but we must be very cautious, because the problem with emic approach is, if you just read something in our text and without analyzing, without trying to test, if you just accept it blindly, then we end up with many contradictions and we end up with many theories. What is that sutra from Patanjali? Shabda jnananupati vastu shunyo vikalpa. Which is to say, you have a Shabda jnana, you read something, but if there is no accompanying, supporting evidence in support of that, then if you still boast it, you still talk about it, then it leads to vikalpa, it leads to confusion, it leads to delusion. Thank you. We'll go for like 10 minutes, okay, and see if you can give a brief answer to some of the questions I'm going to pose. I have two lists, one from the morning and one from the afternoon. Being biased that I am, I'm going to start with the afternoon list. Okay. So the first question is for Mahalingam Balaji. Namaste Guruji. I believe that the casteism propaganda created by British, but I am also in a flux. When I know my... Can you read it? I also need glasses by the way.
But I am also in a flux when I know my grandchildren. Missing. Yes, that will be better. Yes.
Do you know who wrote this question? Okay, we'll take the next question quickly. This is also for Mahalingam Balaji. How do we respond to the questions we hear about untouchability, lower caste people not allowed into temples, flow, etc. And when did these become part of our society? The untouchability and not allowing them in the temples.
In terms of untouchability, the first thing is when we are looking at the history, we are not looking at any denial or any whitewashing, we call it. If certain things have happened in certain places, then that needs to be acknowledged as its needs, and that is the first disclaimer I will put. Having said that, have we even understood this word called untouchable? If I quote Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, he himself says that the British have recorded a one-sided version. And what he calls it as mutual separation. He even quotes British authorities who have said that there are certain communities which consider that a Brahmin passing through their street is supposed to bring them bad luck. And sometimes they may even gather, if somebody dares to walk like that, they may even slipper that person. These are words which are documented by British and which have been kind of highlighted by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. He even goes on to say this, that the totem is like a religious symbol or the religious object of worship. For the untouchable person and the other communities in that particular village are different and distinct, and more research needs to be done into this. So this is something which has been described in the Casticide book as well. It is actually known as what we call as Achara Veda. There were different acharas which were being practiced, and predominantly of them being the Tantra Shastras, Agamas, which are, there is a book called Jatimala which was being used during those times, and the Tantric texts were something which the Europeans could not understand, and they called it as demonolatory. It's called, they did not see how the Vedic tradition and the Tantric tradition would have coexisted. Right? In their mind, these are different, these are devil worship, demon worship. And in the book itself, I have quoted that there is in a place called South Travancore. It's just Samastana in Kerala, today's Kerala. They have destroyed no less than 15,000 such devil temples. They call them pay-queens in their Indian language. So the question which comes up is if everything was destroyed by the Vedic tradition, this tradition never allowed 15,000 of these temples to be destroyed. It actually coexisted with them. So what is this intolerance we are talking about? So that is the question which we need to look at, and maybe more details are in the book. In fact, in the book has a cover. In that cover is the Murti called the Paramasati Murti. This was partially destroyed 200 years back by the colonizers themselves. They partially destroyed it, took that Murti, which is a Tantric worship Murti. It was in Britain, and I think in February I wrote to the Honorable External Affairs Ministry. They actually took the effort to find this Murti in London, not in the London Museum, but in one of the artifacts of London Museum. So now they are helping us to see how we can get this Murti back. So once we get this Murti back, then we will know that there was no such thing like intolerance or hatred. So we may have to relook at our past without the bias of the colonialism. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Give it to Dr. Shiva Shastri. He wants to add something to the same question.
I think one of the things nobody knows is that, see, I'm a retired surgeon. We practice untouchability in the operating theatre. Okay, it is same as untouchability. It is the same untouchability that my grandmother used to practice as muddy. That is, after bathing herself, for cooking, or for other people, for physicians also, nobody is allowed to touch. In the operating theatre, once you're scrubbed up, but once you have a sterile gown, you're not allowed to touch. And very briefly, I don't want to take too much time. You see, there is this tradition of, you attend a funeral and you have a bath. Why? What is it? Is that person dirty? No. There were communicable diseases, deadly communicable, smallpox and other things. You need to cleanse yourself, you need to wash yourself. So, certainly some aspects of untouchability are related to hygiene, but nobody is going to believe it. No Indian has the guts or the self-image or the self-confidence to talk back to the Westerners who say, yes, yes, sir. So, well, I leave it to the Gen Z to do something about it.
Just hang on for a second.
Yes.
There is a question for Dr. Shiva Shastri, so I'll just add it to that. And the answer is actually simple, but it's better you hear from the horse's mouth. Has Dr. Shiva Shastri written a book on all the topics he spoke about India and Pakistan?
I've written a book on Pakistan. I've written a book on Operation Sindhu. I've written a book on the Aryan invasion theory. But the place where I have the greatest amount of, intellectual diarrhea is YouTube, where I have more than 300 videos about my love of my life, military aviation, war history, and things like that. So yes, if I say anything, it is usually from some degree of knowledge that I have had. I have followed military aviation and things like that from 1962.
Quickly, I'll ask the last question, and if all of you can give a brief answer, each one of you, that will be great. This is the question: how do we speak the truth in public, in community with kids, when the entire community outside following or influenced by wrong history? Abbas?
Well, that's my domain. I deal with the medieval Indian history, and I have also dealt, like you would recall that I was talking about, we can't believe much about the invasion in the Sindh because we take the narrative from the Chachnama, which happened later on. So likewise, when you start to delve into the history of Islam, you will find that there are a lot of loopholes. They used to exaggerate the dates. They will, say, hadiths were commissioned under the Abbasid rule, which is 250 years after the supposed demise of Prophet Muhammad. So there's a lot of loopholes there. Now, when you want to talk about the history related to Islam, it's really a problematic situation because you can talk about Allah, you can talk about Quran, but you cannot talk about Prophet. Which I have learned it hard way because once I was diving deep into it and it's got trouble. We should not do this. What you should do is, you should literally speak about medieval era atrocities, bring it in the light, and people have been doing it from long, like KS work is very seminal, he has done some fantastic work. Then a little work was done by Sitaram Goyalji because there was a time when we were trying to be reactionist, we were trying to give a reaction to what Marxists were doing. So not a lot of scholarly work came up, it was more of a rebuttal. But following on the footsteps of those giants, you can start to pursue it. But get to the sources very correctly is very important. Because we often tend not to understand what is written in the text. We get carried away by the translations, and there's a big problem. And maybe many times the text is saying something else. You thought that perhaps this is what is correct, and it can call on a fatwa on you. It's very important to verify through the language. If you don't know, don't do it. It's a very dangerous trend. It's a very advice by somebody who works on it.
So, namaste. I think the way we look at it is to see that, as Dr. Chaitra mentioned, it's about ancestors and we being the trustees of the civilization. We are here in this point of time, but we are here and there is going to be future generations. So it by our ancestors to the next generations. So if we view it that way, it does not matter how many people are talking about it as for or against or this, it is just that we are practicing our Shuddha. Then the Ishvara will be guiding us. And I always say that in the year 1323, 10,000 Sri Vaishnavas got at the Sri Ranganatha Swami temple in Sri Lanka. They took 60 years. They took the Murti around, called as an Amperumal. If you go and take a darshan of Amperumal today, it is because of the sacrifice of those 10,000 Sri Vaishnavas. And they did that just because they didn't see it as a ownership of them. They decided that it is something which the Lord himself, the Perumal himself has come and they have seen the Perumal this way and they want to give it to the next generations. If we see ourselves as the trustees, then all these questions will vanish. We just do what we are supposed to do.
Hindus need to develop guts. For that, go to primary sources, find out what is known and talk about. One of our enemies is secularism. If you remember what happened to Nupur Sharma, in the courts, Nupurs are right up to the top. Our leaders are like that, they are secular, they are scared, they are gutless, cowards. We've become a nation of cowards. So, in fact, for me, I had a very large following on Twitter, and then I put a photo of Muslim children doing susu on a photograph of the person and got banned. And I had to rebuild my following or whatever it is. These things happen. Be careful. Don't say angry things that may hurt people. But go to primary sources, speak the truth. Satyameva Jayate should not be a slogan. It should be what you do from inside.
So I think basically there's an incompatibility between the modern education system and what is the true history. So one way to deal with it, especially if you have children and education, is perhaps to make interesting things. For example, travel. So I'll give you an example that if suppose some guest comes over to Mumbai, right? So what I've decided is instead of taking them to Gateway of India, what are the traditional tourist spots of Mumbai, I'd rather take them to Amarnath Mahadev Temple, the Parel Mahadev Temple, which actually very so Mumbai had a lot of Tirtha history also. They had a lot of Devasthanas. So maybe we start from that slowly and perhaps that may change.
So I'll just add one point because you should please go by and check one thing. What is Article 153? It's very important to know. 153. You talk about 295 and state of the freedom of speech in India is very important because most of us become very protective about these regulations. But you should really voice to get rid of it because once you do it, then only Purpaksha can happen. Because if you talk about Islam, if you talk about the Abrahamic cults where the problem lies, then first state will catch hold of you because they will go and tell that we have been offended. There should not be a law which lets you not speak the truth. Because I believe that if I have got the truth by my side, say it's Hinduism, it can pass any scrutiny. And if any religion or faith system is scared of a scrutiny, there is a problem. But it can only happen if you can get rid of those laws. But somehow we Hindus also have fascination of curbing freedom of expression, which we shouldn't. We should be very open to it, and that's the way forward.
I want to thank all the panel. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much for the panelists.
Thank you to our esteemed guests for sharing their unique and powerful narratives.
Alright, so thanks for the enriching evening with your presence and perspectives. So many ideologies that we discussed today. Now we would like to invite Sri Santosh from Param Foundation to come on the stage and hand over the presentation to our panelists. Firstly, let's hand over the token of appreciation to Sri Mahalingam Balaji. So thanks, Sri Mahalingam Balaji sir, for your excellent and bold perspectives on how the old caste system is a myth, how to play offensive in challenging the system by understanding the origins of caste system and dismantling the same. Very insightful. Thank you so much. Dr. Shiv Shastri, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause. Thank you so much, Doctor, for sharing your flow of thoughts ranging from colonization to radicalization, the good and bad as per the books, and how often we end up comparing ourselves with the world. How not to think about world class, but to always focus on the top class. Thank you so much. Next up, Abbas ji. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Abbas ji. Abbas ji, your poetry is so powerful and inspiring, to say the least. Great thoughts about writing history by metaphors. How our festivals are a representation of Dharma and that our Bharat possesses and not just a drop in the river, but the river itself. Thank you so much. Shri Venkatesh Rangan, thank you so much once again. Your detailed accounts of Hind and Bharat's military naval expeditions are mind-blowing. Really made our eyes wide open. Those specific instances and facts that are portrayed about expeditions of our kings are simply thrilling. We surely had a lot of things to learn and also unlearn so much about our own Itihasa. Thank you, Venkatesh. And last but not least, Nilesh ji, as always, thank you so much for being a We look forward for your upcoming book release, Udhbhavaha address, and wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much to all our panelists. I would request all the panelists to stay on seat. Okay. So we have a special event. I would request all the panelists to.
Now we request Shri Ritvik to come on stage for unveiling a very special moment of the day.
Big round of applause to Ritvik ji, please. To come on stage from Param Foundation, and I would request Divakaran also to join us on the stage, please.
Namaste to everyone. I request all the scholars gathered here to unveil the books. We are releasing 6 books on the occasion of KS Narayanacharya Lit Festival. Venkatesh is releasing Bharatiya Conquest of Foreign Land. Dr. Shiv Shastri is releasing Operation Sindhu. Shri Mahalingam Balaji is releasing Brahmin Genocide and Casticide. Divakaran is so far. Whatever money we have accumulated, we put it back. We have reinvested to publish more and more books. Thank you so much.
Sri Ritvik and everyone who made the moment so special. Books like these are testimony to the fact that knowledge is infinite, abundant, and there is so much more to learn, to know, and to read and prosper. So with that, this day is almost drawing to a close. Thanks to all our panelists and participants.
I hope ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನ ತುಂಬಾ ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ವಿಚಾರಧಾರೆಗಳು ಹೊರತು ನಾವು ಕೇಳಿ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಐ ಫೀಲ್ ಈ ಸತ್ಯದ ಅನ್ವೇಷಣೆ ಮತ್ತು ಕಲಿಕೆ ನಿರಂತರವಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಬದುಕಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಅಳವಡಿಸಿಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅದೇ ನಾವು KS ನಾರಾಯಣಾಚಾರ್ಯ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡುವಂತಹ ಗೌರವ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. As we bring this day to a closure, we leave with the thought that true dialogues never really end. It continues quietly in our thoughts, in the answers we have found, in the new questions that have arisen, and in the way we see the world around.
I'm sure this is only the beginning. We continue tomorrow with more insightful talks and with much awaited award ceremony. Let's meet again tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. same place. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow.
Wanted to have a request with all parents and the friends who gathered here. I think this is an awesome and an opportunity for us to come for this kind of an event. So I request everyone to spread this news and all the friends and relatives and ask them to attend tomorrow's event. So let's meet tomorrow at 4:30. Shiva Sanjay. Thank you.
So coffee arrangement is there outside. I would request everyone to please help yourselves with the coffee. And please don't forget to visit our stalls which are there outside. Thank you so much and have a nice evening, ladies and gentlemen.